Kick her
Yep.
off.
So yeah, Kyle Wheeler, spent 20 plus years in the military, both sides of the fence, both an enlisted guy and commissioned. Grew up in the Midwest fishing farm ponds. A lot of it was cane poles. So anybody that's into fly fishing has heard of Tinkara, just kind of the original version of Tinkara. Don't mention that in Bozeman, you might get run out of town. Um, but similar to Mitch, as I got ready to get out, I wanted to get out into the outdoor industry. I was fortunate enough to get a internship with Trout Unlimited in their veterans partnership program that they run. It brought me to Bozeman. That was just a heartbreaker to have to deal with. And did that for 90 days, didn't pan out. And I already planned as part of that to go to guide school. So I put my GI Bill to use, went to guide school. I'd probably been fly fishing for 8, 10 years prior. And from there, the outfitter that ran the guide school kept beating me up to come put a packet in with him. Finally did. So this will come up on my third season of guiding. First 2 seasons were full-time while I was doing a grad school program. This year will be part-time because I got a real job, and that's kind of to pay for my guiding. And we'll talk about that later as we get into this, but I'm glad to be here. Appreciate a chance to talk to everybody. If you got questions, let us know.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. So kind of the first question I'll throw out to both of you guys as we get going is, and you kind of hit on a little bit, but talk about how you transitioned into the outdoor guide world when you were coming off of active duty and service. How did it work out? What kind of schooling or credentialing did you have to go about getting? And what resources were there out there for you guys to tap into, whether that was GI Bill or tuition assistance or anything the VA or the state was doing, and kind of cover that. And then maybe if you've got any like what skills from the military you thought were most beneficial in the transition as well. So whoever wants to fire away first on that.
Well, I kind of opened that can of worms. So, I mean, like I said, I was doing the Trout Unlimited gig. With that, I thought at least going to a guide school would help. The biggest part for me, guide school was slated for 4 to 5 days of rowing a drift boat. So that's why I did. In the state of Montana, and I can talk Montana specific on this one, I know of 4 outfitters that are also certified to teach guides. Not every outfitter is, but 4 of them that are certified and also take the GI Bill. 2 of them are close to Bozeman. One's up in Big Sky, Gallatin River Guides. The other's Sweetwater over in Livingston. Black River Outfitters over by Missoula, and I can't think of the 4th one, and I apologize, should have done my research. But most of the time, a quick Google search will bring those guys up. Understand with VA certification, that stuff comes and goes. There's certain hurdles the organization that does it has to jump through. So if they say they do, but they lost certification, don't get upset. There's others out there. So to get into it, like I kind of said, Mike beat me up to do my certification. So in Montana, you have to either have experience and or a certified guide school. Gallatin River Guides is one of them. So that creates it. You fill out a packet, get certified by an outfitter, get insurance. There's a whole litany of little things. You have to get an independent contractor card. Ballpark off the top of my head, first year, just to get licensed, you're going to drop about $800 cash just to apply and get licensed for the first year. That's covering your outfitter's insurance. There's 2 places in Montana that do that for guides. It's liability insurance. That's $400 a year. I think it's $250 the first year you apply for your license. Independent contractor cards, $1.25. A couple other little things just to get licensed. Then once you're licensed, now you got to go find an outfitter that'll put you to work. And I'll talk that later because I know the questions Andy's got teed up, but that's kind of how I got into it. I'll do real quick. I know Wyoming's pretty open. Pretty much anybody can hang out a shingle and say they're a fly fishing guide. Their hook is to get on a lot of the rivers, you have to have a permit. Not hard to get. It costs money. There's some of that. If you get to be an outfitter in Montana, you get permits for Forest Service and other stuff. You go over to Idaho, namely for me down there, it's a Henry's Fork. Very similar to Montana credentialing, but they also have a stipulation on any river. They have named sections by the state, and either the outfitter or his one designated representative has to certify you as a guide on those sections. I know the Henry Fork has 5 sections. You have to row that section with either the outfitter or his representative. They sign off on it. Then you can take clients down that. So say if you get certified on A and B, but not C, D, and E, you can't take clients down C, D, and E. States vary, like I said, but that's kind of the basics on the fly fishing side. Mitch, I will turn it over to you for outfitter.
Thanks, brother. Yeah. So how I transitioned, like I said, I was kind of lucky because I knew some people, outfitters and everything beforehand. But obviously, if you don't do it constantly, it's just one of those skills, just like in the military, right? You lose that skill. So when I was transitioning, I reached out to several organizations or anything, just asking like, hey, does anybody do an intern? I know there's guide schools out there like Swan Mountain, the Colorado Outdoor Adventure Guide School, Bridger Institute, things like that use the GI Bill. And some of them, and don't get me wrong, guys, some of them are probably really good. But looking at like the curriculum of some of them also, I was like, well, half that stuff I don't need. And some of that stuff is probably good. Some of it's not. So do I want to really waste my money on a week-long course or a 2-week-long course like that? So when you're transitioning, you're looking for schools, look at stuff like that, look at their curriculum and everything. And, if you have a bunch of skills you're bringing from the military, like land navigation, right? That's like, 5 days at the guide school, at one of the guide schools. Do you really need 5 days of land navigation coming from the military? Probably not. I guarantee you're probably all pretty well versed in land navigation. Look at the things that are going to help you, like horsemanship, right? Not everybody's been on a horse before. Not everybody understands a horse. So look at stuff like that. If they're heavy curriculum into horsemanship, that's what you're going to want to need. Right? Because when you transition, not everybody's going to be a guide, right? You're going to come in, and I know it's going to be a further question down the way, but you're not going to start out running 6x6 elk, for an outfit. So when I transitioned, I got in with an actual outfitter, and I did an internship with them in Wyoming. And through that internship, you meet more and more outfitters and more guides. So you grow that network, right? So when you're transitioning, they're going to talk about networks, and that's the big thing. And that's what you're doing right now, is you're building a network, right? So now, Kyle, myself, you're going to have our contact information. So when you start transitioning out and you have questions, you can always reach back, and you're reaching into that network. And that's going to help you a lot when you're trying to break out in the outdoor industry, because it's tough, right? Nobody tells you how you're supposed to do it. There's not a playbook. The GI Bill can be used for some schools, not all schools, because they're not all credentialed. The TA is not being used at all right now. That's one of the things that's getting built upon through the Veterans Compact Act, is trying to use that for outdoor, not only outdoor work, but outdoor therapy and everything also. So those are some things that you look at as you transition. And like I said, the training that you have, we all, through the military, we know land navigation. We all carried heavy shit on our backs, stuff like that. That helps. And then just the ability to adapt, right? We've all adapted a lot throughout our military careers. So just, sucking it up and adapting to different environments, different clientele, and I think that's a huge thing for the military background. That's all I got, Andy.
Yeah, I know I kind of teed you both up to go right into this next question, but appreciate kind of that aspect of, starting out and getting into just getting into the industry and the network aspect. That's important for everybody to understand. So next one is kind of talk about your first jobs that each of you had within the guiding industry. How'd you find it? And what are some important considerations for everybody that are looking to start out? Like, what should, realistic expectations on what they're going to be doing, what they're going to be making, what they're going to have to pay to get in, gear, et cetera, and kind of how that whole world works when you're
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got
Oh, go ahead, Vitch. No, you're first, man.
All right. Yeah, so I think some of you guys were on the last series and everything. And one of the things, and we're not trying to deter you from wanting to be in the outdoor industry or anything, but there's just some things that you guys are going to have to understand. One, when you break out into the outdoor industry, you're probably, like I was saying earlier, you're probably not going to start out as a guide, right? You're not going to be out there pushing clients or anything like that. You're going to probably start out as a packer, wrangler, camp jack, things like that. You're going to build yourself up to that level to actually start shadowing a guide and then taking clients on your own. That's not saying that you can fast track it, right? So, having the background that I had, hunting since 1989, I got to hunt in a lot of different countries, states. So I kind of had that cool background. So when I transitioned, really the only thing that I had to learn from basic was just the different packing techniques, right? So I packed the first season and got to shadow a guide that first season. Second season, I was guiding on my own. Now, it's not saying that it's going to happen to everybody, right? There's going to be some guys that come along that just, stuff doesn't click for them. So it might take a little bit longer just to learn kind of the horsemanship stuff and the packing and everything to be able to start shadowing that guide and then go out there and guiding and everything. So just keep that in mind. I'll be honest, guys, some of the most frustrating employees that I've had as an outfitter, or some of the most frustrating people that I've worked with as a guide, have come from a military background. And that's just because you just got to swallow your pride, right? You've been in the military for 10, 15, 20 years. You're used to being at the top. You might have been that first sergeant, that sergeant major, or that lieutenant colonel, whatever, and then you're coming on to an outfit and you're not that anymore. You're not at the top. The outfitter's at the top. Then he has his, main guide. And then you might have, a few other guides underneath that. And then you have your packers and your wranglers and your camp jacks and stuff. So you're going to start, at the bottom, and you're going to work yourself up. And some guys just couldn't handle that. All right. So that's just something to think about. And we're all professionals, right? So just when you get on that first job, just be a professional and work hard, and you're going to be rewarded for sure. And then, starting out, most outfits, depending on the size of the outfit. So I actually got to work for the outfit I interned with, which was really cool. They had, some equipment, but just expect to have your own equipment when you're going into. Have your own tripod, spotting scopes, binoculars. Always have a guide rifle ready for it. Have your own, if you're going to an outfit that has horses, have your own saddle bags, all your tack and stuff. That lessens the impact on the actual outfitter and everything, especially if they have a bunch of clients and all that gear's got to go towards clients. So expect to be putting out a lot of money when you're starting out. I can tell you, starting an outfit, I'm in it, $50,000-$60,000 already. And that's just for horses and tack and everything. And that's not the consistent costs of, feed for the horses, vet bills, shoes, gas for trucks, things like that. And all the maintenance that goes along with everything. Also, that's some stuff that a lot of people don't see. We see all the glory on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, but you don't see, the many days we're out there tearing drive shafts apart and rewiring shit and, repacking bearings and putting shoes on horses and everything. All that shit's not glamorous, but that's, a bulk of what we do. And then it's starting out, expect, starting pay. And sorry if I'm stealing a bunch of your time, Kyle. starting pay on average, you can expect about $200 a day when you're actively guiding or wrangling or anything like that is about the average pay you're going to see. And most of the guides are going to be seasonal or contractual. And I know Kyle's going to touch on the contract stuff and everything, so I'm not going to steal that thunder from him or anything. But just expect, unless it's a larger ranch where, you got cattle or horses or anything that you're constantly pushing and stuff, just expect that outfit to be a seasonal work. And I'll leave the rest for you, Kyle, brother.
No, thanks, Mitch. Yeah, you touched on the unglorious part, and that's what they don't see a lot of times on Insta. So, and again, I love guiding. I have had some amazing people in my boat. I've had some not so great people in my boat. It's give or take. Minimum buy-in to be a fly fishing guide if you're doing walkways. This is licensing and minimum gear you need. Your first season, you're going to be about $2,000. On top of that, you need a vehicle that can haul 3 people and all your gear. So your Prius that get great gas mileage doesn't work. Most guys around here run around in a Toyota Tacoma. It's just the guide choice of truck. The other buy-in is if you buy a drift boat, and I will tell you right now, the drift boat market is obnoxious. That cost is going to be somewhere around $15K. That's your credentials, that's your rods, that's your flies, your basic supplies, and a drift boat. You can't find it. I bought my drift boat 3 years ago. I could sell it for $2,000 more. I put a big ding in the side, and it hasn't, I mean, I clean it, but it hasn't been reglassed or anything. I could sell it for $2,000 more and it would be gone in a day. It's just the market. So there's that. First job, again, with retirement, VA composition, my wife got a nice job here in the area. I didn't have to chase this hard. So I really worked for one outfitter. I took what I could get. But if that's what's paying your rent, your mortgage, your first season, you're probably working for 4 to 5 outfitters and you're chasing every trip that you can get your hands on. I will tell you, if you do that, don't double book yourself, because then you will be down to 0 outfitters real quick. It can happen once, and the guys on both sides will be understanding, because I got a call at 10 o'clock, my second season on a Thursday night, if I could do a client meet at 6 o'clock for a guy who double booked himself on Friday. And I did. It happens. Getting into pay, and Mitch kind of touched on it. It varies by outfitter what they pay. I'll just kind of do an annual. If you're working 100 to 120 days a year, gross, you're going to make about $50K a year. This isn't the Captain Jack's Instagram productions. Those guys are great, but it's not them. Now here's the wrinkle. You're a 1099 contractor. 35% of that goes to taxes. Your first year's a freebie. You don't have to pay quarterly. After that, you either pay quarterly or you pay penalties if you pay at the end of the year. It can be significant money. I just like to tell guys that ahead of time, because it can sneak up on you. A lot of guys, and I know Mitch and I chatted this, in this area, they will do fly fishing guiding, 100, 120 days. And I'm talking, that's almost straight. You may have 5 or 6 days off the summer and you aren't fishing those 5 or 6 days. You're just recovering. Then the guys go, they plow snow up here. They do ski patrol. They do ski lessons. Think of any other kind of winter work you can do in the mountains. Guys go and find that because they've got to make ends meet. If they don't have a retirement check or mama's not making good money on the side. Again, I don't want to like downplay it. It's great, but I also want to be honest to kind of what you're getting into if you get into this line. And I think that kind of covers it.
Yeah, guys, that's some amazing insight. And I think that reality, aspect of it that people are kind of yearning to kind of, get an understanding of what the lifestyle is like and everything going in. So that kind of leads in, to the third question I had here is maybe just talk a little bit about the ins and outs just of the guiding profession from your point of view as an independent contractor and then as an owner operator, that progression model, maybe after that first or second year, like what are you kind of, what paths have you guys taken and what are you looking for and what are some of the aspects that play into that?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, first year, probably 2 seasons, you're hustling for every trip you can get. Whatever outfitter will throw you work. If you do well, you'll get kind of a sugar daddy or sugar mama, and you'll have an outfitter to throw you more trips. And then you're working 6-7 days a week for one outfitter. Makes managing a calendar much easier. Over time, you will get better clients because there's a batting order on every roster. And they know who calls in. They know when big money calls in, and you have some ridiculous money people call in. And the brand new junior guide that's number 20 on the list, he's not getting that client. The guy who's 2 or 3 on the list. It's just the way it is. And then the other option with the fly fishing side is to become an outfitter, because in Montana and Idaho, you cannot be a guide independently. You have to be an outfitter, and then people work for you. If anybody wants to see it, I have run complete numbers on starting my own outfitting business. I will tell you, there's no real money in it until I'm running 10 guides plus myself, and I'm on the river for 100 to 120 days of summer. And there's a lot of paperwork. At the end of each year, an outfitter owes a check and every log to the state of Montana of every trip they ran. In the big picture for me right now, because I work, and this is my own plug for them. I work for Dan Bailey's out of Livingston, Montana, world famous fly shop. Dale, the owner now, he pays the best. He's great to work for. So with that, it doesn't benefit me to become my own outfitter running it full time. Ryan knows he's on here. I am going to get my outfitter license, but that's to do AFI trips and other donated stuff. So I'm not doing Mother May I for that stuff. But it's, you're hustling your first, I'd say 5 years, to get ahead. All right, Mitch, I'll turn it over.
Yeah, so I alluded to it a little before, right? So when you break out on the hunting side, and especially a lot of your Western outfits, and I can talk a little bit about Florida outfitting also, but you're gonna start, like I said, probably around the Packer, Wrangler, Camp Jack, and you're probably gonna do those jobs for a couple of years, and then you're gonna go into shadowing either the outfitter or their main guide, and maybe that 3rd year to that 4th year, you're going to start taking clients yourself. And like Kyle said, you're not going to get those whales, right? You're not going to get those big clients. You're going to take, you might be doing drop trips, or you might be doing some hiking clients, and then you might be doing maybe 1 or 2 hunting clients and stuff that first year that you're actually guiding. And a majority of the guides that I've dealt with and that I know, they typically will get in with one outfit and they'll kind of stay in that one outfit. Hunting guides won't move around a whole lot unless their livelihood is moving them around, right? So if they're take a job down in Colorado and they want to move to Colorado, or they want to move to a different state, then they'll look for an outfit there, and they'll move with into that state. But a lot of guys will stick with one outfit. Licensing and requirements are going to be a little bit different for each state, and I think they touched a little bit on that last time. I can tell you, Wyoming, as a guide, it's right around $140 for your first registration or your first time being a guide. You'll take an 80-question test. Once you pass that test and show proof of first aid and knowledge of the area that you're going to be guiding in, which means you probably should have interned a little bit or worked for one of the outfits in that area, packing or wrangling, so you kind of know the area. And then you have to work for an actual licensed guide, right? So you have to have your license and you have to look for a licensed outfitter within the state. To be a licensed outfitter in Wyoming, it's a little bit different. It's the same, you got to take a test, but they send you like a packet of 6 books and, you know, all the laws and everything. And you take a test, and I think it's $600 for that one, for your outfitter test. Colorado's a little bit easier, and I kind of wish they weren't. But same thing, you don't take a test, but you do have to register with the state as an outfitter. You do have to show proof of everything as far as knowledge of the area. You have to show proof of insurance, proof of surety bond, first aid, and then they'll issue you your outfitter's license. Guides do not have to be licensed in the state of Colorado, but if you're acting as a guide, then you must be working for a licensed and insured bonded outfitter. Arizona's a little bit different. In Arizona, you just walk into their game and fish down there, unless it's changed. It's been a couple of years since I've been down there and guided. But you go down there, you just walk in, you take a test. They have 2 separate tests, one for fishing guide, one for hunting guide. I think it's, I don't know, $400, I think is what it was last time I checked, or last time I did it. And you have to do that annually down there. And then Florida, the outfitter has to register with DNR in Florida as an outfitter. You don't got to take a test. You don't got to do nothing, you know, and that's kind of the way East Coast it kind of works. They're not as strict as they are in the Western states, just because they don't have the trophy species is what we call them, you know, out there. Like, you know, they don't have the elk that we have. They don't have the bighorn, the moose, the goat, you know, all those big animals that we have to deal with and manage in the Western states. So they're a little more lenient on their laws towards the Midwest and going east and everything. And then, you know, transitioning to guide to outfitter, you know, it's a big jump, right? You go from only having to have, you know, one saddle, one set of saddlebags, to, you know, having one horse, to now I have to have 3 trucks, 2 trailers, you know, 12 horses, you know, tack for all of them, backup tack for it. You know, I gotta have, you know, 20 boxes of horseshoes. I gotta have, you know, so you're looking at, you know, worrying about just yourself as you start out as a guide, and you're not having to contribute so much money or time or whatever to the actual outfit. Because you're just taking your, you know, you're worried about your clients at the time. That's it. To, you know, running your own outfit, where now you're worried about all the equipment, all the horses, all your guides, all your clients. So it's a huge transition, and to be honest, it's a lot of money. And just like Kyle said, you know, if we're lucky, because, and some of you are going to be lucky because you're transitioning, you're retiring, so you're going to have that retirement income, right? So we have that retirement income that we can fall back on and we can lean on, so we're not as stressed, you know, going out there and doing this job or starting that small business out there. So just keep those things in mind when you transition. You don't want to put that, you know, the military already stressed you and your family. Don't put that additional stress on you and your family, you know, trying to get out here in the outdoor industry. If you're serious about it and you really want to do it, you know, it's going to happen. And you have the network like BHA and all of us to assist you to get there. Hope I answered everything, Andy.
Yeah, both of you guys did, and then some. So, you know, just some great information and knowledge bombs getting dropped there. I appreciate it from both of you guys, and that reality check again. Maybe switching gears a little bit on type of question now, you know, with your experience and kind of how long you spent in it. What do you guys recommend based on that to some of those, you know, on right now listening, or those that are gonna watch this later, of like, what should they be looking for in an outfitter when they're trying to find that first job? What makes a good outfitter vice a bad one? You know, what kind of clientele do you kind of looking at all those aspects, and just getting into that, build that network, and make sure they're getting into a position that's going to give them opportunity to be successful and not get taken advantage of.
Yeah, so, you know, you always want to look for an outfitter that fits kind of your same mentality, right? And kind of your work ethic and everything. And, I tell everybody this, when you're breaking out, find out where you want to go. Because learning all the state's laws is tough. But figure out where you want to go first, right? So if you want to be in Montana, go there, learn all the Montana laws for guiding, right? So when you go and you interview with that outfit, you can ask them like, hey, do you follow, this and this and this? Do you follow? Just make sure they're not a fly by the night outfit, because there's a lot of those across the states. And the last thing that you want to do is jeopardize, one, your guide license, and then two, the career that you're trying to get into. And you can check, every state has a log of all the outfitters that are registered within the state. So you can check the state website. Just go to Secretary of State website of each state. You can run a check on that outfit. You can check to see if they have any complaints against them. You can check to see if they have any, fines filed against them. So do your background check on those outfitters and everything. And I always, tell my clients like, hey, here's my certificate of good standing. I'll email it to them. Here's where you can check, my logs and everything within the state. So do a little check on, just like they're going to do a check on you, right? And then some of the things, I guess, start looking for is some of those schools that you might want to take. I know if you're on the East Coast of North Carolina, Mr. King's got a great packing school out there. And he does some great stuff, especially for, the soft side of the house and everything. Get in one of his courses, learn how to pack, right? Every outfit's going to be different. Every outfit's going to use, a different type of packing method or hitch on their horses. But just learning that stuff and having some type of knowledge of it's really going to help you break out into the industry. I think that's about. Did I get everything, Andy?
So for me, looking at outfitter, I'm going to throw the elephant in the room out there. I look at what they pay, because I will tell you, average full day trip in Montana right now is probably $600 for the client. There are outfitters that are paying $3 to $3.25. And I know an outfitter that pays $475 a day. And that's a big difference. The other part I think to look for, especially starting out, there's an outfitter 2 minutes from my house. They run about 200 guides a season. It is not unheard of for them to put out 100 to 120 trips a day. Gallatin River Guides up in Big Sky, probably the largest day we put out was 42 guides when I worked up there. And working over at Bailey's, we only run a crew of about 6. Again, on a smaller roster, with the way people are booking trips here, you're more likely to get trips. If you're on a 150-man roster and you're 140, it is what it is. And I saw the other part of this because I got the questions up in front of me. It's kind of typical battle rhythm. Average day as a fly fishing guide is a 12-hour day. I get up, hook up my boat. If I'm not just back-to-back day to day to day, I go wash my boat. I wash my truck. I clean the inside of my truck. Because again, I'm putting clients in my vehicle. I'm putting clients in my boat. I want my stuff to look good. Show up at the shop. If I need to pick up flies, anything else, normal pickup is say 8 o'clock in the morning in a normal season, but I'm at the shop by 7:30. I can't be late. If a client shows up at 9, doesn't matter. It just shortens their day, but I can't be the one. And then full day trip ends about 5. So we're dumping in the water 8:30, 9, depending on where we're going. Here's the other part on the fly fishing side. Before I dump in the water with shuttle costs, we buy lunches, flies, anything else, I'm $70 in the hole before I even put my boat in the water. And then I'm working till 5 o'clock in the sun to go home, do a deep clean on my boat that night, and eat dinner, go to bed, do the next thing. Real quick, last year was super odd because of the drought and the heat we had out here. We had a thing called hoot owl. It's a Western States thing. If somebody hits me up offline, I'll explain it all to you. It's kind of neat history, but that means you can't fish after 2 p.m. in most states. So we were doing client meets at 5:36 in the morning and had to stop fishing at 2. We could be on the river. We just couldn't fish. Normally we were done by that time. The downside of that, we got some late rainstorms. I know early August was one set of them. Kicked up a bunch of mud in Yellowstone Park, kicked it down into the Yellowstone River. So I'm getting up at 3:30 in the morning to go drive 50, 60 miles of river, trying to see how clear the river is to determine where we're going. There weren't a whole lot of other guides to do that. I think that's the military background in me. But I had a lot of guys that were texting me because they knew I was out at the river at 4 in the morning, and they're like, hey, what's clarity at this point? And I send them reports, but it's long days. And like I said, dudes go 100 days with 4 or 5 off. And the final piece on looking for an outfitter is what permits they have. Up here in Montana, Gallatin National Forest, Gallatin River, it's a very select permit. I think there's only 4 or 5 outfitters that have access to do walkways in Gallatin National Forest. So those are the only guys. Guy I work for has Stillwater River, Boulder River, which are less trafficked rivers, more access, get you into something else that not everybody can take people on. But I think that kind of covers it, Andy.
Yeah, awesome insight, and appreciate that, guys. So last question before we go to Q&A here, we might run a couple minutes longer than 9, but no worries, we got the room going, is knowing what you do now, looking back on how you kind of got going, what are some advice? And I know you've been dropping it throughout here, but like maybe 2 or 3 key takeaways that you would give to yourself if you got to do it all over again, that would be applicable to the group here.
Really know what you're getting into. And I think Mitch and I have done a pretty decent job explaining that, you're not going to get rich doing this. I mean, even the outfitter that's running 140 guides, like I know their numbers, they're making money, but they're not millionaires. At least not from that. They are from something else. This is more of a hobby for them. The other part is I don't fish in the summer. I fished one day last summer, and that was a recon into Yellowstone National Park for a trip I had the following week. I fish in February when it's 28 degrees and the water's 36 degrees. I love fishing. And that's kind of the other part. If you don't love instructing other people, don't take them fly fishing, because 90% of my clients have never fly fished before. They've seen the movie A River Ruined It. Some of you know it as A River Runs Through It. And they come out here and they want to do it, and that's great. The other, very rarely do you get a client that knows what they're doing and all you're doing is just kind of positioning a boat. Normally you're doing multiple things, and the worst person to have, and you'll get them, is the guy who goes out 3 times a year for 10 years and he thinks he knows everything. Or gal. It's normally guys though. Women are much easier to guide. But that guy is just going to be a pain in your ass all day because he's not going to listen. And when he finally listens, like I had a client last year, we put a 20-inch brown in an hour from takeout, and he decided he was done for the day, which I was happy for. Yeah, if you're not a people person also, or at least can be one for about 8-9 hours in a drift boat, which is 16 feet long, it's interesting. Real quick, Anthony, I've not guided any celebs, but I have guided some powerful business people, like dudes that can buy and sell people and things before they even know they're bought and sold. So, all right, Mitch, all over to you.
Yeah, I think, Kyle hit on some really good stuff. And the one thing that I will tell you guys, and I hear it all the time, is guys that want to get in the outdoor industry, they say, well, I love to hunt. I love to hunt, so I want to be a guide. Well, there's a difference between hunting and guiding. All right. So when you break out into the industry and you first get that license and your first license and you got to sign that license, once you put your signature on that certificate, you're pretty much signing away every right that you have to hunt for every season that you're a guide. So just understand that. All right. Because your main focus is to take those clients out and guide those clients so they can get an animal and they can fill their tags. All right. So that's the biggest thing that you have to understand. And then two, like I said earlier, just, you got to swallow your pride. Kyle said it, you're going to get some clients that, are going to be really good. You're going to get some clients that you probably will never want to see again for the rest of your life. But as a guide, you're going to treat every client the same. You're going to treat them like they're the best person on earth to get them that animal. And then some of the other things I wish I kind of would have done as I was transitioning was, I knew at some point, in my career that I was going to be an outfitter. So just kind of planning more ahead with that and purchasing a lot more of the equipment and stuff and just kind of building out, everything instead of having to put all this money up front and doing that and just kind of building my platform a little bit better. On that is kind of what I'm learning, going out. For instance, you got horses coming in, horses die, and then you're like, oh shit, now I'm struggling to find horses, same with equipment, everybody's blaming COVID right now, but it's hard to find just certain things, fence posts, for fence, things like that. So just, always staying stocked and ready and building all that stuff out beforehand would probably be one of my biggest advice and tips. And then just learn in your state, man. Learn your state. Kyle hit on it. Learn those permit regulations and laws and everything. Because the smarter you are out there on the ridges, the better guide and outfitter that you're going to be. If you know your job better than those CPW officers or DNR officers, they're not going to mess with you. All right. So just know your job and know the laws and regulations and rules that go along with it and everything. That's all I got, Andy.
Yeah, great guys. I think that's some really good dialogue and some information across there. What we're gonna do now is before we jump into Q&A, and I've got Ryan who's kind of been taking notes on everything that's been getting tossed in the side here. So we'll go through those, and then if anybody else has them, just jump in on the audio here. But we've got some BHA swag to give away. So we've got a AFI t-shirt and hat combo for the first one, and it's going to go to Chase Waller. So Chase, if you can send me either a message on here, or I'll drop an email in here. Just send me your shipping address, your info, and what size you want, and we'll get you that t-shirt and the hat combo. Congrats, man. And then the second one up, so I've got Anthony Benskin. And we've got a 6-pack of the Victory Archery specific public land hunter arrows. You can pick the spine weight on them coming out of the BHA store. So also send me either a direct message on here or to the email I'll drop in the chat here, and we'll get the shipping info and which ones you need or want out of the store there based on spine weight. We'll get those sent out to you guys. Thanks for being here tonight, and congrats on grabbing a little bit of swag out of it. So with that, Ryan, I know you're on. If you want to kind of tee up the first question I saw come in there about clientele base and outfitter guide schools and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I think this is a good question for both of you. We've got a couple questions around clientele. One, how to build a clientele. I think it'd be worth talking about kind of who owns the clientele, the guide versus the outfitter, kind of what that client return is and how they kind of you get them as a guide or whether they go to the outfitter. And then, from a client perspective, what do they look for in a guide or outfitting service? I know Kyle touched on permits, but, big versus small and some of those things. So if you could talk to, from your perspective, building a clientele and that client relationship between guide and outfitter, and then what you guys see or hear from a client perspective and, how a person could potentially position themselves based on that.
Yeah. And way to tee that up, because you and I have chatted this otherwise, Ryan. So in the state of Montana, as a fly fishing guide, outfitter owns all clients. I cannot even advertise as a guide. There are actually laws. I can get squashed and get the ability to ever become an outfitter revoked if I start advertising. Now I say that I've already in 2 seasons had 2 or 3 return clients that have called the shop and say, hey, I want Kyle. And they're willing to adjust their days depending on when I'm available. So outfitter owns them all. Big versus small. It comes down to where people want to go. I know a couple places here do 3 rivers, 3 days. They'll do the Gallatin, they'll do the Missouri, and they'll do the Madison River. People want to do that. Place I work, we can do the Boulder and the Stillwater. If you want great dry fly fishing about the 4th of July and maybe 6 other boats on a river, come see me. We'll go hit the Stillwater. Because you hit the Yellowstone in July on a Saturday, you're going to have 50, 60 guides and also a whole bunch of rafters and other people. So that kind of varies. And then depending on with the social media, depending on the name the shop is created. Dan Bailey's is world famous. So they get people, their grandfather, their father fished there. So they come over there. Other place I've worked at, Gallatin River Guides, has done a tremendous job of advertising on social media this year. And I know from talking to them, their bookings are up about 30% versus last year. And last year was the best year they'd ever had. I think that kind of answers that. Did I get it, Ryan?
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate it. And I got you and I scheduled for the 4th of July in the Stillwater, so that helps.
Yeah, hunting side, same thing, right? Outfitters, they're gonna own all clientele, and there are gonna be some of your larger outfits. They will have you sign non-compete agreements or non-compete statements, saying that, hey, if you leave this outfit and you go someplace else, you're not going to take that clientele with you. So just understand that, especially if you go to a bigger ranch or something like that, you might have to sign one of those agreements. As far as clientele, like Ryan said, Kyle said, there's gonna be clientele that are gonna call and request certain guides, just because they like those guides, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of times your outfitters are probably gonna take your whales, your big name people, just because it is their outfit. So don't get butthurt or anything like that if they come in and they take the big name person out. But you're going to work yourself up to that for sure. Large outfit compared to smaller outfit, it just depends on what the clientele are looking for, right? So a lot of your big outfits that are on private ranches, and I'm talking, like the Big Boquilla in Arizona, right? That's a 700,000 acre ranch right down there. So they get a lot of big name people that come in there. It's a private land that you have to pay to get on and all this stuff. So a lot of your big names and your big money are going to go to places like that. All right. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing wrong with going to a small outfit either. Right. Sometimes those smaller outfits, they have those little honey holes on those public lands that they can get into and get you just a nice elk or bear or deer or whatever that they're looking for. And a lot of clients might just be looking for the experience, right? So, they might just want to be, hey, just drive me to camp, drop me off, and we'll hunt for a few days. Walking's fine. I don't want to be on a horse. Or they might come in and say, hey, I want the full backcountry experience where we get on the trailhead and we ride a horse for 20 miles into a backcountry camp and we hunt out of that for a week and then we ride 20 miles back out. So it just depends on what the clients are looking for too. And then you just have to be flexible for whatever outfit that you want to work for.
Thanks. We've got a question. So Chase is staying in the Tampa area. So yes, specifically around there for references, but I think a larger question would be, how, you know, I mean, one, how do you get in part-time? And I think you, I mean, this is, Mitch, you alluded to that a little bit, you know, when you started, but how do you get into it part-time? And then, you know, how do you go through like all the guides on the internet and everything else and kind of pick the one that you think is going to fit what you want to do? And I know you guys have touched on this a little bit, but, you know, a state like that's not Western, like, again, I think Chase is specifically talking around, you know, Florida and Tampa, like, how would you find a guide or in a state like that, or maybe something, you know, on the East Coast?
Yeah, so like I said, you know, the East Coast is a little bit different from, you know, our Western states as far as, you know, who can be an outfitter and everything. Like I said, down there in Florida, and I can speak to Florida specifically because I work there every year. That outfit, all you have to do is register with DNR. So you can contact DNR and you can ask them like, hey, who are your registered outfitters in Florida? And they can refer you to a list or send you a list of all the registered outfitters that are in Florida. I know Florida specifically, they do a lot of game ranches down there for access deer and stuff like that. They got a couple, you know, the different exotic species and everything. But a majority of your outfits in Florida are going to be your alligator and your Osceola turkey. That's what you're going to see a lot down there. So, you know, pick off that list and just call them and be like, hey, I'm really interested in breaking the outdoor industry. You know, I want to be a guide, or, you know, I want to get into this. You know, would you take on, you know, a part-time or, you know, an intern just so I can learn? And man, I would tell you a lot of them are going to take you on, you know, because it's, and again, don't think that you're going to come walking on and you're going to be actually guiding right away. They might take you on just to run around and set up blinds, you know, or fill feeders, or, you know, all that, but you're going to learn stuff as you're doing that. And that goes across the board for anybody, right? So when you get out to the Western states, like I said, every outfitter is registered with the Secretary of State. Same thing, you can get on there, you can search by outfitters. It'll bring up all the current and active outfitters. So get on there, reach out to them, and, you know, and say, hey, I'd like to, you know, work part-time, or, you know, want to come out for a couple of weeks and just learn, you know, how to do it. And a lot of outfitters are going to take you on because, you know, I alluded to it earlier. It's hard to find good help and good work. A lot of guys, gals, kids, you know, they come out and they're one season, they work and they figure out, hey, this shit ain't for me, and they don't come back, you know. So we have a lot of turnover right now in the industry. I hope I answered that question, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks. And Kyle, anything that comes to mind from your end, whether it's fly fishing or, you know, kind of fishing in general?
Yeah, on the fly fishing side, a lot of the younger guys start out as shop guys working in the shop. So somebody that's still on active duty, if you've got a fly shop near you and you're willing to work weekends, get your credentials, because you're going to also have a guy get sick and it's that last minute. Hey, Kyle, Johnny broke his leg. You're in today. You're taking these guys. If you have both of those and you're willing to work weekends, because that's a lot of when clients come in, like Thursday through Sunday, it can open you up. You start picking up a few trips, you show well in the shop. The other part is you're going to get other guides, old hats that have been doing this for 20 years, and they're going to take you under their wing and they be, hey, these flies work on this river. Here's a spot, those kind of things. And you get yourself known, and then other outfitters will find out, hey, Johnny's in here and he's killed in the shop. I want him in my shop because clients like him. It's just, you can do it part-time while you're still active duty.
No, thanks, Kyle. And I think both of your comments kind of allude to the next. So Anthony asked about, you know, and to me, this is a little bit more offshore focused, but, you know, are there roles for mechanics to keep the trucks and boats running? But with that, also, if you could touch on some of those other roles, then guide, like maybe Mitch talk about a packer versus a wrangler versus a camp jack and what that looks like, or, you know, are there mechanic roles or kind of any of those other ancillary roles? Like you mentioned just briefly, running and, you know, filling feeders or putting up blinds or something like that. What does an entry level position look like for those first few years before you become a guide?
So I can knock my part out real quick. Our drift boats have no motors. So we are the power behind them. Unless you know how to do fiberglass and can reglass the bottom, there's just not a whole lot there. So it's really narrow in the fly fishing industry.
Build trailers.
Yeah, so not necessarily do we have like strictly mechanics or strictly one person doing one job within an outfit. Some of your larger outfits, like I know Red Feather Outfitters in northern Colorado. Once wintertime season's over, they take all their trucks and trailers to a farm in Nebraska. They drop them off, and there's a guy there that just services all the trucks and trailers and gets them ready for the next season. And they just sit there all winter long, right? But that's a big operation, right? You're talking several trailers, several trucks, and everything. So you might see some of that in larger outfits, but mostly in our smaller outfits or average size outfits, it's us doing everything, right? So we're fixing our trucks, we're fixing our trailers, we're taking care of the horses and everything, and that's just everybody. That's not just one wrangler or one guy. That's everybody's pitching in to do all that stuff. But when it comes to the actual season, then we start breaking down into those key roles, right? So, as a wrangler, you're getting all the horses ready and everything for each day. Pulling them out from pasture or putting them out to pasture. You're kind of just taking care of the stock, making sure all the clients' horses are saddled and ready to go. Your packers, they're putting, a lot of times they're going to be the same old packer wrangler, but they're getting all the mules ready or horses ready and everything with all the gear for the trips. And same thing, just assisting with that. And then your camp jack, they're kind of a ace of everything, right? So they're going to be, helping with packing and wrangling, but they're going to be doing everything in camp, from fixing tents to getting wood to helping in the cook tent to whatever needs to be done around the camp. And then, like I said, then you graduate, right? You might shadow that guide for a little bit, and then you'll start taking clients on your own. And like I alluded to before, there's guys that like it just clicks, right? And some guys are really good at it, and their first year they might half the season be packing and wrangling and camp jacking, but they're just understanding the game, and they might be shadowing or even taking clients that first year. So don't get discouraged about it, but just understand that really the path of it all is going to be starting at lower level. In a couple of years you're reaching that guide level.
Oh, thanks. And one last question, before we kind of open it up and people come off mute, but could you talk about like people that are going to want this to be their primary job and rely on this for income, how to maximize the seasonality? Maybe Kyle, you talk about, in Patagonia versus Montana and kind of, maximize that. And, Mitch, if you could kind of talk about, the different states and the different species. So it's not just maybe a 6-week window in the fall, and how to maximize that if this is going to be your livelihood.
Yeah. So, I mean, fishing world, guys go south, guys fish Arizona, other places in the winter. There's a place in Colorado that and it's eluding me right now. You can get on in Patagonia. That's a whole other nut roll, because new rules about 10 years ago, no gringo can be an outfitter in Patagonia. There's a couple old hands that are grandfathered into that, but you go work for somebody who's Chilean or Argentinian that's running the outfit. But again, you've got to be like at a top-notch outfitter here in Montana or some other state, and you've got to be the number 1 or number 2 guide at that place. So you're talking you're 10 plus years in to be able to get something in Patagonia. Some of the other places in the States, go fish redfish down in Louisiana, Texas area. Find JT Van Zandt, go down there and do that. There's options. Or you go snowplow, or ski bum, learn to ski and be a ski instructor. That's a lot of guys up here. And it also gives you generally a month off in the fall and a month off in the spring between seasons to go do whatever else you want. But that's kind of that, Ryan.
Yeah. So, if you want to make a true living doing this to where you're not going to put stress on your family, especially if you're married and kids, The best route to take is to find one of those outfits or ranches that, like I said earlier, is just a year-round operation, right? So, they're running hunts through the fall season, and typically most of your seasons will start in August, and that's for like antelope, bighorn, sheep, goat, and the seasons are going to run all the way through probably January timeframe, and that's for your elk and your deer and everything. And then turkey will pick up, typically in the spring, March, April, May timeframe. But in between that time, if you're with that bigger operation, that ranch, you still have calving operations. You're pushing cattle and horses. They might have some type of farming operation going on, so you're assisting with the farming stuff and everything. So you have that total income. Now, where it might benefit, the guys that are retiring and just want to do seasonal work, you're probably going to start, in July, getting equipment and horses and everything ready. If all you're doing is hunting, right? You're going to be putting camp in August. You're going to be running hunts through December, and then you're going to be stripping everything down and kind of fixing equipment and everything after season come, end of December, January timeframe. And then you're pretty much off February, March timeframe. And then, turkey might start, depending on what your outfit does. What I did, and like Ryan was kind of saying, is, I moved around to a lot of different states and just kind of followed the seasons around. Florida's a great place to guide in because there's always something in season there. There's turkeys in season like 10 out of the 12 months. Deer's in season like, I don't know, they're ruts like crazy. They're ruts in like February or something like that. So, and then there's always seasons going on. So it's a great place to cut your teeth, and just kind of learn a little bit of the industry and how it works and stuff. But there's several states where you can kind of jump around and cover those time frames that you're not actually working within the Western states. And that's kind of what I did was, I would start down in Florida doing that in the spring and work all in March because that's when the turkey season starts. And then I would come back to Colorado because I knew that season's going to be starting pretty soon in May, and I'd work the May season. And then we got sheep and antelope, hitting in August. And then we got right back to elk in September, right? And we're running elk and deer September, October, November. So just learning those different states and kind of jumping around and hopping around to stay employed is a good point.
No, thanks to you both. And Andy, that's all we've got teed up. So I'll turn it over to you and you can open it up to live Q&A or whatever you want to do.
Cool. Yeah, we'll see if anybody's on. We can take this as long as anybody wants to stay on here. So if there's any questions from the group that you didn't put into the chat, just jump in, or if you want to use the little hand thing at the bottom, that's fine too. But either way.
So if we're out in that area looking for a guide, how do we link up with you two guys?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop my contact info, both my email and my phone number. Hit me up anytime. I will do whatever I can to help you out. If you want to get into this, if you just want to trip, whatever you want. And I know in Montana, I know when I say outfitter, I mean a guy who does hunting. Out here, guides are fly fishing, outfitters are hunting. I also know some outfitters, so I can connect you on that side, at least Montana.
Yeah, same thing. I'll put all my information in there, so everybody's got it. But several outfitters in Wyoming, Colorado, Arizona, Florida. I know a couple people down in Texas also. So definitely network, right? We talked about that. So build that network out. And I always take, guys, especially in the military, they're transitioning. They hit me up a lot and they just want to come out and intern, and I'll take them. I will take you if you come out here and everything, and you want to just spend, a week out, come on out, you know.
Great. Any other questions out there?
I've got one last little bit of knowledge. And I know it was somebody asked any celeb stock tips. I've had CEO of the Paul Allen Foundation in my boat. I've had a former chief operating officer of FedEx in my boat. I've had a guy who's co-owner of the Sacramento Kings, and numerous other people. So I would say be knowledgeable, and that's two levels. That's one, knowledgeable about what you're doing. Ryan's been on the Yellowstone with me. He's heard a little bit of my speech. I understand the topography. Pozowitz, who was a big BHA guy, stopped the Allen Spur Dam. I'm able to talk that depending where we're on the river. The flip side is, and I don't say be educated, but be knowledgeable about things. From a fly fishing point, I get folks in my boat who are involved in world events. And at times they will bring up different topics. Hey, did you hear about this or that? At least being able to be conversational in that makes an 8-hour day stuck in a 16-foot long drift boat much better than just being the quiet guy and like, oh, I've never heard of that. If that happens 2 or 3 times, they shut up and the day gets very long.
Yeah, so one last question is Garrett was asking about, this specific for you, Kyle, for a drift boat and or a raft, which could be 2 different requirements depending on what rivers you're on and where you're guiding, but, requires for licensing, are you required to have a Coast Guard captain's license or anything like that for drift boats or raft? And I know it's probably a little state specific.
It is. I know Washington State requires a 6-pack license, which is the Coast Guard license. Montana does not for a drift boat or a raft. And I own both. You can just, now you're talking your 18, 20K in for the 2, just to throw out more numbers. That's if you find a trailer for a raft right now, which is a joke with Ryan and I. But if you go guide on the Missouri, an area Land of the Giants, which is right near where Ryan lives, you have to have a jet boat. Don't even talk to me about price of that. I've owned one before and they're a nightmare. But you do have to have a 6-pack Coast Guard license. So most of Montana with drift boat, no, like Mitch said, first aid, you got to carry liability insurance, but not a Coast Guard 6-pack.
Thanks, Kyle.
And then
Any other questions out there? Paul,
there's one
I'll
to
send you.
Mr. King from Paul in North Carolina.
Yeah. Hey, so Paul, I believe it used to be, and it may still be called Tactical Mobility Training, TMT. He was partnered up with some guys from the other side of the fence, and then he ran both dirt bikes, ATVs, and horses. He's right at the Rayford Road intersection, I think, off of where is it where Wayside, I think, cuts through, if I remember, off of St. Mary. I'll find it and I'll send you a link to it, man.
In Montana, Royal Time's got a pretty good reputation. They take the GI Bill for packing specifically. Like they run like a 7-day packing course and have a good reputation. In addition to like a 3-week kind of guide school as well. But if you're asking about packing, at least out west, Royal Time in Montana has a pretty good reputation.
Yeah, Anthony just posted it too in there, so thanks. Any other questions from the group, guys? All right, well, if you guys do have any more questions, both of our guests, from the guide and outfitter world, drop their contact info in there. Feel free to hit them up directly. And this kind of concludes session 2 of this 6-part series. I just want to turn it over to each of our kind of presenter guest speakers tonight for any parting comments that each of you might have. So Kyle, if you got any last words of wisdom you want to drop, go for it, man.
Here's the flip side for anybody that's nearing that retirement time. And I know, Andy, you're not far from there. The other side is great. Don't be afraid of it. If you want to talk general transition, hit me up. I've got a lot of my classmates from college that are retiring right now. I was able to get out a few years earlier because of prior service time. Don't hesitate. Don't hang on just because you're scared of the other side. The other side is great. There's a lot of opportunities, even if you don't go into outfitting or guiding. Hit me up. I will gladly discuss that with you. I probably do it about once a week right now with folks getting out. So that's kind of my parting one, Andy.
Yeah, no, solid advice. And you're right. I'm not that far out. So, and I'm looking forward to it. Mitch, any closing comments before I kind of take us home stretch here?
Yeah, like Kyle said, man, the other side's great. It really is probably one of the best decisions I made. But yeah, don't, my biggest thing, guys, don't get discouraged, with everything that we just threw at you tonight, and sometimes you might realize, or somewhere along the line, you might realize that, being a guide or outfitter isn't for you, but something else in the outdoor industry is, right? But we're always here to help you guys, make that decision or help you through the process. You have our contact, please reach out. And we're not going to lead you astray at all. We're going to help you with whatever you want to try to do.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that. Hey, so thanks to everybody for jumping on tonight, and really appreciate the interaction, the knowledge that you guys are willing to do, and just, your commitment to this community and what we kind of stand for. This is a tight-knit group of people, coming from that military background, going into the outdoors. And, I think that the network is really important that you guys have mentioned throughout it. So the last things I'll kind of leave for everybody is, again, this is part 2 of a 6-part series. Next week is going to be a really cool one. It's going to kind of transition out of the guiding world more into kind of the manufacturing and the gear aspect of it. So we're going to have Rick Hutton and one of the other guys from FHF Gear, Jake. If you guys aren't familiar, FHF makes a whole bunch of accessories, everything from chest rigs and bino rigs to slings and pack equipment and a whole slew of attachments that go onto it. And they've got a military law enforcement background as a startup, just got bought out a little while ago by Meat Eater. Everything they do is made in the US, and kind of with First Light. So they're going to be on, they're going to talk about everything from R&D and design to how to get into the industry right now. They're going to have some really specific information for anybody that's looking to get more into that side of it, because they're hiring right now and they're specifically looking for veterans to join FHF Gear because they're just exploding. And they'll talk probably a little bit about that during the next week as well. And Ryan's going to be heading that one up, and I'll kind of be in the support mode while I'm up in northern Wisconsin fishing for smallmouth and some muskie. So I'm pretty excited about finally getting out of New England here for a little bit before I then have to go to Fort Knox for 6.5 weeks. But I just want to say thanks to everybody for jumping on. All of the email addresses that were dropped in here on, if you got the recording link, will be sent out later to everybody that was able to make it tonight, as well as those that weren't. And if you guys need anything from us, don't hesitate to reach out, get more involved in the AFI program in your local area. Whether that's coming straight to Ryan or I or any of these other guys that are on, or going through your state liaison if you have one, or just your state board. We've got a really powerful voice within the outdoor conservation space right now. I think it's a great time to add that veteran aspect to that military aspect. We can open some doors, or at least walk into some that maybe others can't right away because of that, and bring some advocacy to this outdoor and conservation space. So thanks for coming in. Really excited about it. You guys crushed it. Thank you, Mitch and Kyle, for doing this and being part of it, gentlemen. Is absolutely awesome. So everybody have a great night. Look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.